everybody, and welcome to our 14th holding space for self and others. It's lovely to have you in this place with us today for another presentation on ways that you can help yourself and help manage others that you're dealing with at the moment in these difficult times. My name is Jackie Short. I'm the Clinical Director of Sydney Centre for Creative Change, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that I come to you from today, the Eora people of the Gadigal Nation, and pay our collective respects to elders past, present and emerging on all sacred lands that we sit and work in Australia today. And welcome to any of our international guests. Today we have an hour presentation together, and what we're going to do is I'm going to show a few slides in a moment. We're going to use a chat box a little bit later on for a special giveaway that we have today. We have one of Deb, who's our special guest presenter today. She's got a fabulous book that she's written, Teaching Kids to Manage Anxiety, and I'm going to give this book away to one lucky person today. I'll send it to you, and there's also a workshop to win. But you need to be able to type into the chat box. So could I get everyone to just type into the chat box, it's Thursday, what's the thing you're most looking forward to this weekend? Type that in, and maybe what you're going to be doing could inspire somebody else if they don't have too many plans, particularly our lovely and special people in Melbourne who are coming to us from there, who are in a more difficult space at the moment, so with lockdown. So if you could type in what you're most looking forward to this weekend, we'd love to read that. So I'm going to introduce Deb in just a moment to you. We're also going to be doing some breakout rooms today, so just letting you know, if you have any trouble getting back after the breakout rooms into the main section where we all are now, all you need to do is log on with that same code you got in with today, and Aidan will let you in from the waiting room. Letting you know also that this session is being recorded today, so it's going to be available for people who can't be with us today to watch later on. And if you did want to view it again, or in a couple of weeks when the recording of this has been edited and is up on the site, you can do the little quiz that Aidan's going to put up, and you can get a PD certificate for this time watching as well. So there's some options for you. All right, so let's have a quick look at some fabulous things that people are going to be doing this weekend. Walk in nature, painting a door. Well done, Rachel. Nice to see something practical happening in home improvement in some of our places. Picture and beach for some, potting, pizza night, lots of pizza happening around, yoga, baking, early Father's Day celebration, some great things that some of you have planned there. Lovely to read. Thank you for that. I'm just going to quickly share my screen and let you know what we have specifically planned for today for you. So our presentation today is on parenting kids anxious to calm. And this is the book that I mentioned, Teaching Kids to Manage Anxiety, that Deb has written and is going to give away to somebody today. We're going to have a little bit of time afterwards to ask Deb any questions that you might have following her presentation. And there'll be an opportunity to connect in with one or two others in small groups for about 5 minutes to reflect on what Deb's presented and how it might be able to help you in your practice with children and families, and maybe even a bit of our own anxieties. And then we'll have the giveaway at the end. So I'd like to introduce Deb to you in just a moment. She's a senior occupational therapist who has many years of experience in working with children with anxiety. And she's passionate about helping children and families getting through tough times, particularly the tough times that we're all facing at the moment. So I'd like to, without further ado, introduce Deb to you. Deb, thank you so much for coming on board today and volunteering your time to be with us. We really appreciate it. We're really looking forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you for having me, Jackie. It is awesome to be here and to meet all you lovely people. It is tough times at the moment, especially in Victoria and Melbourne. And yeah, my thoughts do go out to those families who are really struggling. And I've had a few people contact through our website, Life Skills for Kids, just saying, you know, what can I do? You know, my child with ASD is really struggling, you know, yeah. So yeah, it's been great to be able to reach out to people, yeah, for that. So today I'm just going to share my screen. I'm just going to share a few thoughts about anxiety. I know that everyone here is professionals, aren't they, Jackie? Or a few parents. Yeah. So yeah, we know that anxiety is really, it's on the increase. And I have found this over my career as an OT. And, you know, when I first, can we see the screen there? of my slides? Yep, perfect. So when I first started working as an OT in pediatrics and mental health way back over 20 years ago, I really I found that the referrals were for handwriting, coordination, and then the trend seemed to move towards the sensory processing difficulties. But in the last 8 years, it has really been a focus on the mental health, a focus on the anxiety. And that's not because I've been, asking for these referrals or training in this area, but it is just a reflection, I think, of society and where people are and families are. So let's talk about how we can help parents parent their kids from anxious to calm, because that's where we really need to help parents to be grounded in themselves, to be grounded in their bodies, and to calm their minds so that they can be there for parents to be able to parent with open hands. So let me just figure out how to control this. Okay. So before we look at what the triggers are, let's look at, what does anxiety look like? What does problem anxiety look like? So in children, it can look like avoiding new things, not wanting to go to soccer, not wanting to go to birthday parties. They can be distressed by normal changes from breaks in routine or taking risks. So, for example, in after school pickup, for if the parents say, look, we've just got to pop to the shops, or we've just got to pop and pick something up from grandma's, that can really throw kids. Or even going on a different route to or from school can really throw some kids. Tendency in highlighting the negative, those kids whose glasses are, half empty or, always empty, kids who might ask unnecessary questions. And I get this a lot, even in my own house, like Friday afternoon, I can guarantee you, what's happening tomorrow morning, Mum? What are we doing in the afternoon? What movie are we watching tomorrow night? What are we doing on Sunday? My 12-year-old just needs to know what the plan is, what the map is. And once he does know, then he's fine. Physical complaints, kids who get that anxious tummy, sitting on the toilet in the morning, Mum, I don't want to go to school. We call it in our house the getting the wiggly poos, where kids, have a little bit of diarrhea because their tummy is just tight in knots, butterflies in the tummy. There's lots of different ways of describing that. Kids who like to be the perfectionist, kids who like to have things just right, they need to be in control of their surroundings. Kids who need to, have exactly the same cereal each day. Kids who like to have their work desk at school set up just right. Kids who find it hard to get to sleep. That is, an area that lots of us work with, and that can be their thoughts just racing at night time, and then processing through what they've done, and calming themselves down for sleep. Kids who are complaining or argumentative, or kids who have that whining tone of voice, not so much the aggressive function, but just kids who are whining and complaining all the time. Kids who are clingy, especially outside the home, kids who don't want to separate from you either at transition time, like school drop off, or at soccer or sports, for example. And then the 10th reason for kids having anxiety could be when they're in unfamiliar situations. So there are 10 reasons that might be what we can see for kids with anxiety. So what's the real issue? What's the real trigger? There are many different reasons why kids might be anxious, and there are many different I love this analogy of having, the tip of the iceberg, because kids often use code words to tell us why they are anxious, and the code words are the top of the iceberg, and underneath is the bigger anxiety issue. So code words are little phrases that that kids use as a way to explain how they're feeling without being able to say, Mum, I feel anxious, because the anxious is, or, you know, worry, they're bigger words which younger kids don't use. They don't know what that means. So some of the words that indicate that kids might be anxious include, you know, Mum, what's wrong with me? And this can be a self-esteem issue as well, but, you know, they might feel a little bit different. Kids who say, look, I don't want you, I'm tired, I'm really tired, Mum. So anxiety is really, really fatiguing. For kids who are anxious, they're not certain of the world, and they are holding it together in their bodies. And that is fatiguing. You know, we talk about, you know, paying attention, and the word paying is like an energy payment. When kids are, you know, paying attention, or when they are holding it together with their worries and their anxiety, it's really fatiguing. And that's why kids often come home from school really, really tired, or they come home and they let it all out. They let their emotions bubble over because they are really, really tired from holding it together. I don't want to go to school, please don't make me, is another big red flag that we often hear. Kids are always apologising. They're not really certain of their opinions, or they feel bad for no reason, can often apologise over and over. Again, the kids who say, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, please don't make me go. Kids who don't want to try things, kids who find things hard, and they say to you do it, Mum. I don't want to try, because if I try, I might get it wrong, and then I'll feel really bad. Another red flag. Please don't make me. Can you leave the light on for me? Kids who are worried or anxious of the dark can be another one. I feel sick. That sick tummy in the morning, or the sick tummy before they need to do something. And when are we going? That is a really, really big one. So, you know, you might be at, I don't know, a barbecue with your friends, and they might be a little bit clingy as well, but they really need to know, anxious kids need to know, you know, what is happening, what is the plan, and they need to know a specific time, ideally, of when they are going. And, you know, in the school routine, they get to know that, and they get to know that the bell goes at 3 o'clock, for example, and then that's the time to go home. But in social situations outside of school where there's not that routine, then that can be a really big trigger for kids. And I did a presentation down in Albury last year, and it was a 2 days of different workshops, and I suggested this strategy in the sensory workshop that I did on the first day. And a teacher went and gave the feedback about how she had mapped out for this child, you know, and it was a teenager. They came in and she goes, okay, we're going to do this, this and this, and then we're going to know that we finished when this happens, and this is the time that we're going to finish. And she emailed me after, and she said, oh my goodness, I tried this, and just by having that finishing time made really clear. And I think the key for working with kids with anxiety is to really over communicate. Because, you know, we might think that a preschool child, for example, may know the routine of, you know, outside play, morning tea inside play, for example, and then home time. But they may not have internalized that. They may not, I guess, own that. So we really need to over communicate what's coming up for kids. So when does anxiety become a problem? So it becomes a problem when the fears and anxieties have a significant impact on their occupations. So an occupation for a child is their play, it's their social, it's their learning. And when they find it hard to make or maintain friends, and when it impacts on their participation in family life and in community life, that is a big red flag for when it can become a problem. And parents often say, you know, when should I refer? When should I, you know, go see a psychologist or an OT, you know, to work on anxiety? And I say, look, if your family life, if your family circle is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because it's too hard to go out to do something, because of, you know, any of those red flag, you know, the code words that the child is using, or the anxiety inducing behavior, then perhaps that's a reason. And as an occupational therapist, what we want to do is we want to, you know, figure out, you know, what is the trigger for the anxiety, how we can help them to, you know, to calm their bodies, calm their little bodies, and to use, you know, the cognitive side, using their thoughts. And by using that calming as well as that cognitive approach, we can really support the child from that top down and bottom up approach. So when anxiety is always present, and, you know, it appears to be an irrational fear of those familiar activities that we all do, and that children need to do and are expected for them to do, then anxiety is not just a coping mechanism, but it can become really, really disabling. And I'm sure that that's what you're seeing as well as professionals. So I want to talk to you today about a different perspective, perhaps, of anxiety and how we could categorize it. You know, we all know the different, you know, diagnostic labels, terms that we use as professionals for anxiety. But I just wanted you to think about this from an occupational perspective. And I'll coin the term occupational anxiety. So these are the 5 that we're going to talk through, and then I'm going to show you a poster of which I call the 4 anchors of anxiety, of reducing anxiety. And we can just see how these occupational ways of looking at kids with anxiety we can support them in the different ways. So the 5 different ways are learning anxiety. So that is, you know, kids who find it really hard at school. And, you know, just think, if you were forced to go to a class 5 days a week, or a place of learning 5 days a week, and you tried your best, but you had learning difficulties and you really struggled with learning, and even though you practiced your spelling and you know, tried to do your maths, and you found it really hard to concentrate and to learn, and you still got really bad marks, then you would learn pretty quickly that that is really hard for you, and you would start to give up pretty quickly, I imagine. So these kids this is what they have to do. They have to go to school. You know, they learn in their lessons. And lots of these kids, you know, and there's so many reasons for learning difficulties, and I don't have time to go into that. But, you know, with auditory processing or visual perception difficulties, there's so many, you know, speech and language difficulties. But, yeah, this can create a learning anxiety. The second one is sensory induced anxiety. So that's, you know, when our sensory systems are overwhelmed by too much sensory information. So for example, you know, kids who cover their ears, kids who hate going to the beach and they hate the feeling of sand, kids who hate the sand in sand pits at preschool, you know, any other senses can become overwhelming, and that can induce anxiety, because that sensory input goes straight from, you know, the registration in the skin, for example, or in the ear, that goes straight to the emotional center, the amygdala, and it bypasses the frontal lobe, where we can start to get those strategies in place. And that's why it's so important with anxiety to really ground kids from a body perspective, before we can actually do the cognitive side of it. It's so, so important. Social anxiety, you know, this is, you know, one of those common areas of anxiety. And when kids find it hard to understand the social cues, they misread social cues, they don't know what the rules are, they don't have that that concept of, you know, I have thoughts and I can talk, you have thoughts and they're different. You know, what about, you know, getting a group plan together? Yeah, really complex, and it can be really, really disabling for lots of kids. Emotional anxiety, kids who struggle with self-regulation, kids who struggle with being able to label and to know, you know, recognize how they are feeling. Kids who are struggling, you know, in recognizing when they're going from calm to that warning zone to like a the red zone, if you want to use some of the different programs out there, such as the zones of regulation. You know, kids struggle to understand that. And then transitional anxiety, where we're looking at transitioning from one place to another, such as from, you know, home to school or home to preschool, or transitioning between tasks in school. And that's when having visuals and routines to support those routines can be really helpful in reducing that anxiety, because when we know what's coming up next, then we feel more calm and in control. So I want to show you this poster. This poster is on the right hand side, is the 4 anchors of reducing anxiety that I've coined. So this comes out of some of the theories of Theraplay, if any of you have done that training. So what we need to do is, in helping kids with learning anxiety, the first anchor is helping them feel safe. So having that nurture and having that relationship, that attachment to the child, helping them to feel safe, and that they know that we are there for them. You know, it can be really frustrating as parents, you know, at homework time, when, you know, we are tired after the day, the children are tired after the day, and it's like, why can't you just get it? Or why can't you just sit down and write out those, you know, 5 spelling words? Structure and support. We want kids to know in their learning activities, their learning occupations, we want them to know, I know what's happening and I know what's coming up next. So if we look at this slide here on the left-hand side, this is an example of doing a task analysis. So the little grid there is 4 tasks that they need to do for homework perhaps, or in class. So there's maths, spelling, fill in the blanks, and using a sentence with your spelling words. And this is a common activity that kids, you know, have to do. So at the bottom of the slide there, we have a simple task analysis where we have just written, you know, the 4 different things that they need to do. And then, you know, we could have like the word finished for those kids who can read, or we could have a finished flag, like from the Grand Prix. And just having that can really outline, you know, what you need to do, and that's when you know you're going to be finished. Having the just right challenge. So we need to be able to break down tasks, and we need kids to be able to say to themselves, look, the next step is doable, even with everything that's going on. So, you know, we might break down the task into maths, spelling, for example, but for some kids they may need to break that even more. So you might say, okay, after we've done number 1, let's cross out number 1 in the maths problem, because that's awesome. Okay, and then the next one is number 2. So for example, this activity may be easier for kids when they're at school because of a different environment, but they are also fresher. So they may be able to do this without any structure, without any support in class. But in the afternoon, they are tired, they have given out all their energy. And so doing this may be really, really hard for homework. So the Just Right challenge will change with the same child from, you know, different environments, different times. So we need to break that task down so kids can achieve that Just Right challenge no matter what, you know, where they're at. And then the 4th anchor is, you know, I have a safe space I can go to so my body feels good. And this is really high in that bottom-up approach. So for kids who are struggling with learning at school, they may need to have like a sensory safe space, like a little teepee or a tent, or, you know, going for a walk outside, so they can feel safe to come back to attempt that, that task. The second area is sensory anxiety. So again, that is looking at, are the senses overwhelming for this child? Asking kids to tell a story about, what are they worried about? Which trying to problem solve, which of the senses is really hard for you? Is it the light, or is it the noise, or what's happening? Does it bother you when there's lots of people around? Really trying to problem solve for them. And then sometimes you can figure out that they are okay with 6 out of 7 of the parts of the task, but it just might be that one sensory thing that just flips their lid. So it may be that they are struggling with transition to school. And I did this with a client just last week, and we did a task analysis of, okay, are you feeling anxious when you're getting ready? No. Okay. Are you feeling anxious in the car? No. Are you feeling anxious when you come through the gate? No, that's all right. Used to be an issue, so it's a great improvement. And we figured out that the anxiety issue came when they had to walk up the ramp and the bell went at the same time. So perhaps it is linked more to that transition anxiety, or maybe it's related to the sensory anxiety, and that's where you can do some more detective work. So for looking at the 4 anchors for the sensory anxiety, validating and validating the child's experience, because so many kids they can't know why they're struggling. So we need to not just brush off the sensory part or any of this, really. We need to say, I can see that you find it really hard to put your fingers in that paint at preschool. I really validate that that is really hard for you. Having that structure and support. So, if they are expected to do finger painting, or we're trying to get them to do that, which is, part of their occupation as a child. So we might have, like, for a preschooler, for example, some pictures of, we're going to put, one finger in the paint, and we're just going to paint with one finger today. So that's breaking down the task for that child, which lets us have the just right challenge. They can do that next step. And then, making sure they have a safe space. And this is especially important for sensory. So when kids are sensory overwhelmed, they really need to have that body calming experience to recover. And we talk about having sensory buffers. So if we know something hard is coming up for a child, such as painting with their fingers, a sensory buffer might be and you could use this as both a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So you could cognitively say, oh, we're going to do finger painting today, but you only have to sit at the table with the paint for 1 minute. Really break it down, give them that just right challenge. And you might say, but first, we're going to make our bodies feel really good and calm, because we're going to go outside on the swing for 5 minutes, then we're going to come in, we're going to sit down, we're going to put the timer on so they can see cognitively when that timer will be counting down. And then after you finish, because I know this is hard for you, when you finish, you can go and sit in the sensory safe tent, or you can go outside and play on the bikes, for example. So you can see how we need to, especially with sensory, prepare the child both from a cognitive and a sensory perspective, let them do the activity, the challenge, and then help them recover from that afterwards. Because what we don't want is kids who are going to start to escalate from their responses or their anxiety and, be sent home or put in reduced enrolment, being sent home at lunchtime from school, for example. Okay, social anxiety, just thinking about, the complexity of social, if you think about what are the steps to go and talk to a friend or go and, you know, say hello to somebody, you need to, you know, have eye contact and, you know, choose someone to talk to across the playground. You need to have the confidence to walk up. You need to know how to orientate your body. We don't stand side on. We face generally, you know, face on. How close do we have to get to that person? What's a socially appropriate distance? Close but not too close. We need to, again, have that eye contact, say something, have that self-regulation to wait, and then that back and forth is quite a complex strategy as well. So for social, again, say, look, I really understand that it's really hard for you to go to a birthday party. Structure and support, setting it up, finding out, you know, what time is drop off, what time is pick up, maybe even asking the mum, you know, what's the general plan for the party? Is there going to be games? You know, and even just finding out, okay, the games are going to be, you know, for the first, you know, half hour, then we're going to have food and then another game and then the cake, and finding out when the home time is too, and putting that together, whether it's a list for an older child or pictures for a younger child, just so they have that structure and support for what's coming up. That gives you the just right challenge. And then talking to the mum perhaps, or the host, you know, is there a safe place so that if my child feels overwhelmed that they can just go and just chill out, like in the corner of a lounge room or somewhere. Emotional anxiety, teaching kids, you know, what to do when they feel upset, getting them to identify how they feel, how their body might feel. So this is a little part of a social story that is in the book, you know, teaching them that, you know, when I'm upset, you know, my body does feel different. My heart might beat really fast. My breathing might get fast. This child who I was working with, she used to scratch her arms and her legs until she was bleeding. And then, you know, talking about, you know, different strategies, like talking to an adult, doing some breathing, doing some stretching, doing some kid yoga, and, you know, using loads of social stories, but also embedding the sensory and the bottom-up approach is really important in this area as well. And then the last one is, okay, I've missed transitional anxiety, but we've kind of talked about transitional as a part of the other ones. So it's really understanding and validating that kids are struggling with that transition from one thing to another, putting that structure in. It's like, okay, I'm dropping you off here at soccer. You know, you go and play. I'm just going to be over here on the sidelines. We'll be here for, I don't know, an hour. You've got your watch. We can put an alarm on the watch so that you know when there's, like, you know, 10 minutes to go, for example, so they know it's almost up. And then telling them what's going to happen after. You know, we're going to Macca's for lunch, or we're going to Grandma's on the way home. So that creates a just right challenge. And then also, you know, giving the permission, I guess, that, you know, if they do need a safe space, or if they do need a break, which is, it's kind of tricky to get that just right approach with, you know, allowing that safe space or that break. But kids do need that to recover, not just physically, but just to have that mental break. And what I've started to do in my OT sessions is to have like I have like a visual list of, you know, what we're doing in the session, but actually putting in like a break with a visual, like with a clock or a drink bottle. And we just have like a 1 minute break. We put the timer on, they have a sip of water, they just have that mental break. And then they're more ready to come back in for the activity. I just wanted to mention quickly before we go to questions, this slide here, which is from my book as well. So the SMILES acronym was actually put together by Dr. Darren Morton from Avondale College in his book, Be More Happy, which is an awesome book, and that's for adults. And I've adapted this for kids. So SMILES is an acronym that stands for speaking positively, as adults being grounded so we can speak positively, getting kids to move more, getting them off screens, outside, and moving their muscles, not just for physical strength, but because that will, you know, encourage the calming response. immersing in the physical environment. It's so important to be outside, to get that blue light in the morning, to not have that blue light on screens at night too much, having that 2-hour break before bed. So, being outside with that blue and the green of nature is so important. Looking to the positive, helping kids to reframe their thoughts, getting a plan together, and, using, affirmations or Bible verses, or whatever you find helpful to help them to reframe things. Eating nutritiously, eating a rainbow. And for our kids, that most of the kids that I see, that is really, really hard because they are fussy or problem eaters as well. And on the spectrum, they eat the white stuff, the white bread, the chips, and the smooth stuff. So that can be really, really tricky when they are eating food that is not too nutritious, but that's not actually helping their energy, and it's not helping their mental well-being. Rest, getting kids enough rest. And again, that can be tricky with the kids that we are working with. So yeah, working with professionals to figure out, good sleep hygiene routines, strategies for them to, gather their worries and send them away, like in a balloon, all those visual imagery strategies. And also trying to get some kind of, physical exercise, and maybe some physical calm down, yoga, or, as a kids Pilates called Smarty Pilates, helping them to really calm down their bodies. So again, using that bottom up approach and that top down approach. And then serve, teaching kids, to look outside of themselves, to think of others and do nice things for others outside the family, but also, serving and, doing jobs inside their own household. So there's lots in that. That's an overview of some top points from the book and from my experience. So I'm really happy to go for questions. And it's so great there's so many people on the call.
Thank you, Deb. That was really fantastic. There's been a question about whether your slides will be available, and I know generously you've said that they'd be available for viewing for 2 weeks, and then I'll take them down. So, but this recording is available if you wanted to view it again, so you could have a look at those. So Deb is open for questions now, and Deb, I don't know if you want to stop sharing so everyone can see. That's perfect. I would ask that if you did have any questions for Deb, they're not of a clinical nature, so they're more generalised, just for client confidentiality. And obviously she's available for consultation sessions and has a great expertise in this area, and you'll have her contact details should you wish to do a more personal consult. But general questions, I know she's really happy to answer. And yeah, so feel free, because I can see you all on screen now. If you just want to raise your hand, and I'll call your name out, and if you want to unmute then, and you can directly ask Deb a question, sometimes that's better. Although there are a few questions I'm happy to read out for you, Deb, in the chat here. One from Donna: do you sell any of those posters of the 4 flags?
Oh, Donna, it's free. I'll find the link and I will send it to Jackie. Is that all right, Jackie, for you to send it out to people? Yeah.
Will
so
do.
I'll send you the general tips. I've got about, they keep growing. I've got about, I don't know, 8 or 9 tips sheets that are for free on my website. So I'll send you that link. And there's ones on fussy eating and sensory and the 4 anchors. Yeah.
Fantastic. It was such a cohesive presentation, Deb, having really the underlying issues that can inform anxiety, particularly those different areas that you specified, and then a really practical way of anchoring suggestions for change. The question here from Iris: how do you help kids that get frustrated easily if they can't accomplish their task or see it as a difficult one?
Yeah, I think really breaking it down, coming beside them and doing it with them can be really helpful as well. Some kids, they just want your time. And that's what I'm finding, in stages with my own kids, and I've got a 12 and 14-year-old now. Anytime that they really, they start to say some of those code words that, for anxiety, sometimes it's anxiety, sometimes it's just like a cry for, Mum, I just need your attention now. And so like Thursday afternoons now, I finish work at 3 o'clock and I have mummy time with my 12-year-old. He still calls it mummy time. And like last week we went and had like chips. Yeah, today the plan is to he won this art thing, so we need to write a little article for this magazine. So yeah, it's just time together.
Fabulous, thank you. Another question here from Sarah. During therapy, do you have a series of different sensory items for clients to explore, or do you more assess and then provide or make these available?
Oh, Sarah, I'm just wondering, can she jump on here for a...
I can, yes, I'm on a work computer, so my angles are a bit funny, sorry.
Sure. So have you got an example?
I have quite a number of different sensory items in my private therapy practice room. So sand and therapy, and like beanbags, a few different things for children to explore or access if they like. Not that all children naturally go to those during, because I tend to use non-directive play therapy and stuff, but it's just curious around, I guess, being able to provide some of those supports at home, like you were saying around transitional or what's happening at school. So it wasn't, I guess it was more like, do I assess what they're looking at or for from sensory stimulation, or is it more letting them choose?
Yeah, I think to start with letting them choose, because naturally, you know, those fidget toys you get from, the cheap shops, some of those, we might touch and go, oh, that's terrible. So having like a bucket of different things can be helpful. And yeah, having some kind of sensory safe space, like a little teepee or, cushions, is perfect for kids to do that. But I think having like the outline, or I guess it's in non-directed therapy, it's kind of a bit trickier, isn't it? Because you're following their lead. But maybe just, you could say, look, we're going to be playing here, but if you just feel like you just need some time out, you can just, say, call time out, or have like a little card they can just go or touch or something. And then you could say, look, there's some options. There's like the bucket here, there's the cushions, or there's, having a sip from your drink bottle that you brought.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're right. On the website, there's a heaps of blogs, and there's a couple on creating a sensory safe space, like in the home environment. Okay. So that might be helpful to share with parents as well. Yeah.
Thanks for that question, Sarah. Does anyone else have any questions they'd like? Another question here from Iris. Can you please clarify, is it important first to get them to release stress in a physical way and then do some breathing? Sometimes starting with breathing, they can't relax and do it.
Yeah, so we really need to support their amygdala to help their body to feel better and to calm down, because what we want to do is get that frontal lobe back online, because you need to have some of that frontal lobe, at least half online, so you can actually get them to concentrate on the breathing. Breathing is awesome. Or do some breathing as a part of activities. So, getting blow toys or getting them to blow bubbles. So they're in that play mode. But they're still doing the blowing, blowing out a candle or, something fun. They can sometimes do easier than just like a mindfulness. Okay, we're going to, breathe in and breathe out. At least with the blowing or sucking, and you can get some awesome toys. There's a website, sensorytools.net. They're based in Sydney, and they have heaps of blowing and sucking toys, which, you can clean after each session. But it's, for example, there's like a one where you blow and there's like the two little cars that spin around. So that's awesome, because you're getting the blow, you're getting the suck around the mouth, which is really calming, and you're getting that visual. So you're really bringing everything together into a focus. And there's heaps there that don't make noise as well, which is always good. Yeah.
Thank you, Deb. They're really practical answers and great resources for people to have to go to as well. I've got a question about profession generally. Many of us have mental health training. We might be counsellors, social workers, psychologists, and I know that much of what OTs do also, particularly with children, is some of that counselling and support work. What would you say would be the critical differences between an OT and another type of mental health professional? And when will we particularly want to be referring to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because there is so much overlap, isn't there, from both directions. Oh, I think, you know, if they are struggling with like the anxiety and also the sensory, if the sensory is a really, really big thing, or if the sleep or the eating is really, really a big thing, if it's impacting on their occupation as a child, so if it's really impacting, like I was mentioning in the talk about, you know, if the family's world is getting smaller and smaller, you know, we can all work on that, of course, but if that's, you know, really getting to be quite small, I would really recommend bring them on. But I think the biggest things are, you know, the rest, the sleeping routine, the eating, the fuss eating, and both of those really impact on attention, concentration, which then leads into behaviour. Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. I know that, Deb, you're an ocean dipper. You like the lovely salt water and the embrace, and you mentioned a bit earlier that you'd had a dip yourself this morning, which was great. What we'd like to do now is to give you an opportunity with a partner, and Aidan's going to arrange those groups for us now with myself not being in it. Deb, would you like to be in a group?
Oh.
And have a chat with somebody? So.
Yeah,
Aidan will arrange that. So we're just going to put you in a breakout room in just a moment with one or maybe two other people. And there's two things that I'd invite you to reflect on. One, really importantly, how can you use anything that Deb so generously shared here with you, with the children and families and parents, particularly of children with anxiety that you work with? And also, what do you think of those 4 anchors you can do for yourself? Or what sort of anxiety management practices could you incorporate into managing self-care for yourself? So those 2 things to reflect on. So introduce yourself to your partner. Might find a new friend to meet here. Exchange details if you'd like to catch up with them over the weekend, if you particularly liked what they were planning to do. And just share those 2 things with them. And then when we come back in about 5 minutes, I'll ask a couple of people to reflect on what it is that they can use for themselves and for others they work with. And then we'll have a short game, and then we'll do the giveaway of Deb's book. So look forward to seeing you in about 5 minutes. Emma, do you want to share what you spoke about in your group?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We spoke about, you know, having time frames and the tasks. We basically, you know, picked the things that resonated with us that we thought were good and that we've used in practice as well. And just being really clear about tasks and really clear about setting time frames and almost over explaining, someone was saying, yeah, as well. Yep.
Great suggestions there. Yeah, thanks, Emma. I'm glad you and your partner could use that in such a practical way. Fantastic. Annie, did you want to share? I know you're studying at the moment, but how could you imagine maybe using some of these with children that you might work with in the future, or even some of those methods to manage your own anxiety?
Yeah, I work with children with disruptive behavioural problems in the past, and currently I work as a, Sunday teacher for church children. And some of them definitely show those kind of code words for anxiety during service when it's for extended periods of time. And I think, yeah, what's really important that I'm taking away from this is making things very clear to them. I think someone mentioned it before, like overstating, over-explaining what's going to happen. And I guess if they do feel anxious, having some sort of physical exercise to indirectly let it out first, and then try and do the calming or breathing exercises. I think those are very helpful, especially for me as well. I try to do, even things like star jumps before trying to engage in a breathing exercise. yeah, I think having that sequence and making it clear in my mind that there are certain timestamps that I can, I guess, get through each of the tasks with. And yeah, making it very broken down and chunked for me, I think, is really helpful. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Annie. Thank you all for having that time with a partner, and that really has been such a practical demonstration of how we can help parents manage children with anxiety and help children ourselves. So thank you, Deb, for that presentation, and we'll thank you again at the end. But I just wanted to again share my screen with you and show you what we're going to be doing now, which is the opportunity to win Deb's book, which I know you're interested in. We've had a chance to connect in with one another just now and share some of how this can apply. Letting you know that we've got our next upcoming one of these holding space free webinars on Thursday, the 17th of September, 12:30 Sydney time. And I'm going to be doing a series of these over a period of time, but our first is going to be on this date, and it's around creative, inclusive practice to heal and learn. In the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement in Australia and around the world, I've been really cognizant of the fact that there's opportunities for all of us who teach and who practice healing in different ways to really critically look at how inclusive our practices might be to people who are different from us, and really celebrating diversity in thinking critically about what we can do to include and be sensitive to people whose needs might be different to our own. So I've got two guest presenters coming on, and they're going to be talking from their own experiences, and we'll have other presenters coming on over a period of time. So please do sign up for that one. You can, that's going to be available tomorrow to be able to register for that one. I'll send you out a link when that is available. So please feel free to come along to that. We've got some other ones lined up, and I'll let you know about those as they get. Please sign up for our next free ones. I'll let you know when they're available. Really very generous, Deb, you coming on board. So could I get everyone to visually give Deb a big thank you and appreciation for being here today. And thank you, Deb, for your wonderful contributions to this space. I'll see you all next time. All the best. Bye now.